don't usually have good news in international politics, nor do we in the world of leftist international politics.
I was just thinking that. I was like, dude, I haven't this is like the first good news I heard in a minute. Like, wow.
Seriously,
That's
but
weird.
with all of the important polls reporting, the official one, we can say that Lula da Silva has been elected by the people as the next leader of Brazil. It's been a long time coming. He was a leader turned political prisoner who had just recently gotten out and done a run against Jair Bolsonaro, who some of the international or some of the American media had lazily called him Tropical Trump, trying to just like get a sense of what he was like. But Trump, and I don't mean this facetiously like I usually do on PowerPoint, Trump wishes he could have been Bolsonaro on a real level. Bolsonaro was doing stuff that was on a whole different level. And to break down the importance of these election results here and what we can kind of look for right now, because as expected, as a Trump-like figure would, Jair Bolsonaro is not conceding this election. And so I have C's here, resident Brazilian Power Report contributor here to talk this and break this down with us. C's, thank you very much for being here.
No problem. Glad to be here. Glad to see that, there's democracy's back in Brazil.
So you were following the vote. What are some of your initial thoughts as you see the elections come in? I mean, when we knew that there was going to be a runoff because Lula didn't win enough votes in the first round, these final results seem pretty good right here. It seems like at least 1.5 or more votes, almost actually say between more than 2 million votes at least, of a difference between Lula and Jair Bolsonaro, with 100% reporting.
No, for sure. I think that obviously in the beginning, Bolsonaro started off with a big lead. He does have a large support with a lot of the western part of Brazil, with some of the farmland and agriculture workers, as we know, hence his, acceleration and deforestation in the Amazon and Brazil. He started off with an early lead, but really the most pivotal part was him needing to gather the votes in the Northeast, the Nordeste. Now, the Nordeste was actually trending worldwide at the time. It was such a topic of discussion. And I think that you obviously mentioned earlier, Trump wishes, he was able to do what Bolsonaro did. The funny thing is also, I think the big difference between Bolsonaro and Trump is that I think Bolsonaro is largely much more narcissist and dumber than Trump is. And his approach was with a lot of vitriol towards the Northeast, making a lot of comments towards people of this region as illiterate, a lot of jokes. And when you're trying to run for politics and trying to get these positions, I think his approach was too bombastic for that region. And I think the people that it didn't win over the votes. And as we saw by the results, Lula gathering 60 million votes. Brazil's democracy is young, but that's the most votes ever gathered by a president in a presidential election for Brazilian to win. And the Northeast largely all voted for Lula, for the PT party in red.
I think in America we're following a lot about the Republican side trying to suppress the vote, trying to make sure fewer people are voting. Do we get any instances of that in this election in particular? Was there any instances of a relationship between Bolsonaro trying to infiltrate either people who are counting the votes or other officials or things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Famously, when the American elections were going on with Donald Trump, it was discussion of Trump basically telling his supporters to stand by and watch and, cause that kind of voter suppression. Well, Brazil actually had government employees running voter suppression with the Police Rodoviária, which is Brazil's basically their whole highway patrol, doing a lot of very funny traffic maneuvers to divert people from getting off at 5 p.m. or from not getting off, sorry, for people that were voting to have a difficult time reaching their voting stations. We had this famous video of Kahala, a deputy for the far right deputy, chasing down a Lula supporter with a gun in the street.
Hold on, let me see if I can get that video up right here.
Yeah, run that clip on her.
Carlos Zambelli armado aqui, galera. Carlos Zambelli armado aqui, ó. Carlos Zambelli armado aqui, galera.
This guy is...
É a Zambelli, é a Zambelli.
Yeah, she really pulling up to the padaria like that.
Yeah, go on.
How you gonna roll up to the padaria like that? You know, just trying to get some food in the morning. You know, just, like wilding right now. Yeah, that's a really good shirt.
The whole argument was just because a Lula supporter who was a black man, and this is a very racialized sort of election here, was saying tomorrow Lula, very just innocuous political phrase. But you're seeing essentially a far-right cop who is taking matters into her own hands and like going, okay, this is my right to bear, shooting anyone who disagrees with me politically. And in Brazil, it's a lot like right now in Brazil, it's a lot more just like on the nose with what's going on. But the Republican pundits in America, the politicians in America are walking up to the line of just saying that, you know, this is the most important election ever. They're going to take away your guns. They're going to take away your rights. They're coming for your children, all this other different stuff. The Republicans are walking up to this point where they're trying to encourage people to do this. Democrats, maybe like one or two Republicans, are trying to say, yo, tap the brakes because you don't want to go there. / the left is like, y'all not ready to go there. But yeah. I mean, how does it feel to kind of see some of this? I mean, like, especially as a Brazilian, like in the country, especially when you're seeing that Bolsonaro doesn't seem intent on just letting this election go.
No, I think that Bolsonaro coming into election was like probably the most divide I've ever seen he created among Brazilians. I think that Lula was all about unification. Lula was at a point in time, Lula's previous presidency was the largest gathering of people of lower class and middle class gain. Like they gained and had so much more money than ever before. Brazil's economy was booming. Then he had the transition into Dilma, and we saw the coup that happened there. It became like the falling apart, and it created a divide with Brazil. Bolsonaro was all about division. He was all about making like power and aggression and you know, that whole quote unquote machismo energy, you know. And I think that that's great to entice people who are just willing to absorb this content like in a brain dead fashion. But we had a lot of Brazilians, especially, I think another example of the far right failed on is what happened when a pandemic hits. When the pandemic hit Brazil, Brazilians suffered a lot of deaths. And when Pfizer had came out and told that they'd contacted Bolsonaro 13, 15 times, and he was, you know, leaving them on voicemail, leaving them on red, you know, that may be funny for him to joke about and talk about and deny, but he can't deny the millions of people that died, even though he tried to. You know, he made a lot of jokes about COVID. I mean, we have joked on this show about this man being a 5-time champion of COVID. And you know,
undefeated. Put this man in the ring.
Undefeated. The man's benefits are stacked. I mean, the man has no copay, clearly.
No, but like whoever the cat gods are like, and this man's taking out a lot of lives. He's about to be in debt, brother. Like,
this man is the prime example of evil never dies. Like literally, evil never dies. This man just kept going. But yeah, so I think that the hardest part was that he created division. You know, and here I am on this show discussing. I'm largely a privileged Brazilian. I don't live in Brazil. I'm from the Northeast. I'm from Bahia, and I live in America. But even sitting from this perspective, it doesn't mean that you can't lend yourself to understanding the people. And his campaign ran on that division. But when the other side, and even a lot of people who were in that middle fence, suffered so much, he never rectified his message. He never changed his message to appeal to everybody. He kept his message as being aggressive and very pro the rich and pro the people that pro military, pro this. And that's just not going to work in a country that's consistently suffers. Brazil, as a young democracy, is over democracy. They're sick of politicians. They're sick of this. That's how Bolsonaro got in. He got off that energy of they're sick of politicians and lies. But now you're the politician that's lying. What happens? You lose that. And that separation, especially with the Marielle situation, Marielle passing away, famous leftist activist in Brazil getting gunned down by a police officer. And the rumors are that allegedly Bolsonaro orchestrated this or had some role in it. You know, that starts to hit people in the heartstrings. And I think that at the end of the day, Bolsonaro suffered a defeat that was of his own volition. He created a separation and was never able to adjust his message to keep it going. A lot of problems with the far right, especially in I think in Latin America, is that they have too much ego to really understand what they've done wrong to move forward. They just keep pushing through with the false information narrative, and it's just not. You can't keep going that way.
It's another country that's taken aback by false narratives and news and media. These things spread very quickly on social media, and the social media networks feel even less compelled to do these things because it's not English, and a lot of these people are not white, and they just simply don't care. And they don't face the same pressures as they do in the United States, these social media companies. And so, kind of touching on that division, what are you going to be watching for next? People who are just watching this from afar, I personally am just like, okay, I guess we're just going to see what happens with whether or not Bolsonaro contends the selection or not, or tries to fight it. We know that Bernie Sanders, among others, were supportive of a measure in America saying we are going to support the democratically elected member, like person who wins the leadership of Brazil for this exact reason, in anticipation of Bolsonaro trying to do some coup attempt shit like this. So what do you think will be next? And I guess, yeah, just what are your predictions?
Yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to move forward. Obviously, this is some of the biggest, I'd say, some of the biggest fake news, media-driven funding I've ever seen from a Latin American president. Bolsonaro spent millions and millions on peddling fake information online, and it was horrible to see. But obviously, seeing the result was good. We did see that President of Argentina, even Putin and Biden said that they're having a meeting today with Lula, acknowledging and recognizing him as the winner, which is positive news. He's getting big support from some of the big players in the Western world, especially, and I think that validation is very important, especially Uncle Bernie giving some love to Lula, who he had in the past, even while Lula was in prison. He did. Through a lot of controversy, he did it. I thought that was kind of a bold move back then, but Bernie was on that big time back then. Moving forward, obviously right now Bolsonaro's radio silent. Obviously, with some of these far right leaders, you see that when dealt with a fat L, they tend to instead of being tough and strong, we tend to be a little quiet. Don't really say much. And Bolsonaro, the meme right now is they're counting down the hours in Brazil, saying 16 hours since we've last heard from Bolsonaro. The jokes about that. He hasn't recognized or conceded his position. I think it's a mix in between of him having a lot of ego trip and, unfortunately, maybe he might be plotting something with the crew. But who knows? But the good thing is that the people have recognized this. The large leaders have recognized Lula as a leader, and I think that's the biggest step moving forward. Brazil, it's very similar, where it's not going to be till January until that seat he can actually begin making some moves. And I think right now to look forward to is really that transition of power. It's like how it happened here, where everything was buck wild, and we were just waiting for, like, come on, Trump, just pass the power, just pass it over, pass the seat over. Like, come on, like, don't make this weird.
But even by then, like, we could be in for some pretty turbulent times in Brazil, especially because, as we're seeing, the shorthand is it's the same things that are going on in America, many of the similar things, but it's a lot more on the nose because of the way society is going on there.
No, for sure. And I think that a lot of the stuff we're going to be seeing, I don't know much about the people. I think the people are buck wild no matter what in Brazil. They turn up, man. And we're in the summer. We're getting into the summer of Brazil. It's going to get wild there. I think it is really interesting to watch how the military responds to this, not in terms of military doing something, but just to see how they acknowledge, who their chief is going to be. Lula, the police. There's a lot of strife there. He had a lot of political influence over the police and the military and in Brazil. I'm very interested to see how that transition of power. Very hopeful that it moves smoothly, but I can imagine there's going to be some really goofy behavior, and I think having that support from the larger members outside of Brazil is going to really lend itself to Lula. And also Lula himself, he's the pinnacle of, like, never giving up. Clearly, we see this man. This man was literally in prison. Didn't get to see his niece pass away, a nephew pass away. Find him in prison where he could only get news from his lawyer once a week. I mean, horrible conditions. And this man came out of there.
Came out of solitary confinement and everything.
Everything to become president. This is quite the story. And I think what Brazilians really resonated at the time was that we need someone with that kind of fight to get us back to where we were, because a lot of promises and goofing around like Bolsonaro didn't really lend itself to much, but worse situation than Bolsonaro. And Lula has that fight, and I think that fight is going to lend itself to helping out with the Supreme Court in Brazil, helping out with the Congress in Brazil, and gaining that power back in that union. He was a union leader. I think he's really good at unionizing the people and communicating with them, and I think that that's going to be a focal point in these days ahead, which might be tumultuous for Lula getting into a seat of power.
Yeah, I hope, of course, for everyone, especially for Brazil's sake, that Lula is kept safe, that there is as peaceful a transition of power as possible. I think that a lot of this stuff is happening so publicly that's going to be pretty hard to deny the election in any sort of way. Like, it's not even close in a lot of these cases, so of course they'll cry voter fraud, they'll do everything they can, kicking and screaming, but hopefully when we do, 2023 season of Power Report, we get to start talking a little bit more about, wow, Lula has an agenda. Lula, as the leader of one of the, probably the largest nation in South America, not just by land, but by population, if I'm not wrong, right? Like, what that can be to kind of set the tone for the hemisphere. And I really look forward to have that conversation with all things going well. Lastly, I just recommend all viewers check out the dearth of work that Michael Brooks did, late Michael Brooks did, in relation to Lula. That's a lot of how I was finding out about this as well. A lot of people on the left was a really pinnacle sort of information source on this. And one of the last things he did before he passed, which was so great, was to get to interview Lula. And I think that interview in particular is really important contextually even today. So I encourage folks to check that out. See, is anything else people should check out? And where can folks find you especially?
Yeah, for sure. You can guys find me on Twitter. We made it C's.
Still on Twitter? Damn.
One of my favorite people, I think, especially for an American audience trying to really understand, who I think a lot of Americans kind of get Brazil's pop and just knowing Brazil, but Brazil has a large influence on they're literally just the America of South America. They have a lot of power, population, and influence over South American politics. You saw if you were Brazilian, you saw a lot of the jokes of the Venezuela references going down there. And Lula is a big proponent of, the indigenous culture and South American culture. Michael Fox does a really good podcast. He did I think it's 6 segments on Spotify called Brazil on Fire. It discussed the whole Bolsonaro run and some of the politics down there. He's a great, he has also on Twitter too, Michael Fox. He does a great job covering and discussing some of the politics and leftist stuff, movement that was going on with the PT party and everything going on. He's probably one of my favorite English references to kind of understand and see what's going on. He's an independent news writer in Brazil, and he did a really good series on Spotify. You can check that out if you want to kind of understand what's gone on down there and led to what we are now with Lula.
Yeah, I've been following him basically through you as well, and he's proven out to be a good resource. It's increasingly difficult to find reliable leftist resources that cover international news. So I'm glad. A lot of flip-floppers, a lot of people who aren't even wearing shoes. So it's just, it's a mess there. But thank you very much, C's, for joining me. Thank you all for joining us. And yeah, this is going to be one to watch for sure.